This is the MSI GS76 Stealth, a large-screen 20mm thick gaming laptop. Unlike ordinary gaming laptops, it has 4K resolution with 120Hz refresh rate plus DCI P3 color gamut. The specs are impressive. The hardware is flagship level i9 and RTX 3080 with high capacity RAM and hard drive allow you to juggle between work and gaming, which looks pretty nice. So what's the actual performance of this laptop? Can it be your ideal laptop? After this video, I'm sure you'll find out. Let's go through the specs first. This laptop uses the i9-11900H processor with 8 cores and 16 threads. The graphics card is RTX 3080 16GB with a maximum power of 95 watts. A luxurious 64GB of dual-channel DDR4 3200MHz dual-rank memory, a Samsung P9A1 2TB SSD with PCI 4x4 speed, and the display is a 17.3-inch 4K IPS screen with 120Hz refresh rate with a nominal color gamut of 100% DCI P3 with color management. Obviously, this laptop is top of the line, so it's not cheap. The listed price is $4,255. It's for the rich indeed. The GS76 Stealth comes in solid black. The top panel is a fine brushed metal which feels good. MSI's Dragon Shield logo is in the middle. It can be opened with one hand, 16:9 ratio, narrow bezels on 3 sides and a camera on the top. The bottom is 1 inch wide. Now the base panel. Air intake on the top. SteelSeries collaboration keyboard supports per key RGB. Comes with various lighting presets. The key travel is 1.9mm. The layout of the keyboard is commendable. The keyboard and full-size arrow keys are retained, but the keycap size is smaller than normal. You need to get used to it. The touchpad has a good feel, but the size is a bit small. The touchpad is not quite aligned. There are obvious seams. A high-end model costs more than $4,000. Details need to be polished. On the bottom panel, the upper part is an irregular grille. A first-class energy efficiency sticker is here. The whole machine weighs 2.38 kilograms. The thickness is a bit over 20mm, handled pretty well among gaming laptops. Although not thin as a small size all-arounder, it's more portable than traditional 17-inchers. Let's look at the ports on the sides. The ports on the left are the power port, Ethernet port, 2 USB 3.2 ports, and a 3.5mm combo jack. 2 Type-C ports on the right. One is a Thunderbolt 4 supporting 100-watt PD charging and is also backward compatible with 65 watts. The other one is USB 3.2 supporting video output. There is also an HDMI 2.1 and UHS 2 SD card reader, a full range of ports, and supports PD charging, which is hard to find in gaming laptops. The highlight of it is the display. Let's take a look. This is a 4K 120Hz screen with wide color gamut. The nominal is 100% DCI P3. It has a MSI True Color Management program. Quickly switch with the color gamut. What confuses me is it says DCI P3 color gamut on the web page, but there is only one display P3 option in the program. There is no direct option for DCI P3 mode. In this mode, it has a gamut volume of 101.2% DCI P3 and a gamut coverage of 96% DCI P3. Because the color range of DCI P3 and display P3 are the same, only the gamut and the white point settings are different, so the test results for gamut color are similar. In Adobe RGB mode, gamut volume and coverage are both 85.3%. If you switch to sRGB, the gamut volume of the screen will be limited to 94.4% sRGB. This prevents oversaturation when viewing web content, solving a pain point of such screens. In addition, the color accuracy in each mode is also good. The average delta E in display P3 is 1.15 and the maximum delta E is 2.25. Average delta E in sRGB is 1.07 and the maximum is 1.79. Both are at good levels. Average delta E in Adobe RGB is 1.48 and the maximum delta E is 4.94. The main reason is that it doesn't fully cover the ARGB color gamut. The deviation in the green part is slightly bigger. Then let's check the brightness and uniformity. In the 5x5 area, the maximum brightness in the middle is 500 nit. The brightness on both sides is a bit lower. The lowest block is on the left at 445 nit. The screen uses full brightness DC dimming. The brightness time is 10.8 milliseconds for black to white, 14 milliseconds for grayscale. If you enable overdrive in MSI Center, the response time for black to white drops to 8.2 milliseconds and the grayscale drops to 10.1 milliseconds, but at the same time there will be a signal overshoot causing ghosting. Choose at your own discretion. Overall, the quality of the screen is excellent. 4K 120Hz plus 500 nit brightness is already awesome. MSI also equipped it with a color management, making the wide color gamut screen more practical. Now it's for performance. As for CPU, it's equipped with an i9-11900H, 8 cores and 16 threads. By running Cinebench R20 in performance mode, we got a score of 5090 in the first round, then it declined, staying at 4670. You could see the power reached 100 watts in the first run, then it decreased gradually. From the 7th round, power first reached 80 watts at 3.8 GHz, kept for a while and then dropped to 70 watts, at which the CPU ran at 3.55 GHz. The CPU topped at 95 degrees Celsius throughout the benchmark, like it's getting thermal throttling. If you switch to hypercooling mode, the first few scores won't change. The stabilized one will increase 200 to 4870 or 4900. The power and clock speed also increased. The last few times it reached 90 watts first and 3.95 GHz and then dropped to 78 watts, 3.75 GHz. The temperature declined too from 95 degrees Celsius at first. Let's take a look at the GPU. It has an RTX 3080 with a maximum power of 95 watts, including a basic power of 80 watts and a dynamic boost of 15 watts. In the benchmark results, the score was 9476 in 3D Mark Time Spy, 12629 in FSE, 6339 in Superposition 1080. In all, it's about 90% of 140 watt RTX 3070. Seems the 95 watt for the graphics core like GA104 isn't quite enough. There is a gap compared with heavy flagship gaming laptops. Considering the size and level of performance released, the GS76 Stealth is an all-arounder rather than a pure gaming laptop. That's it for the benchmarks. Let's see how it performs in field test. As for gaming, it can increase the frame rate by enabling Mux Switch. Just enable this one in MSI Center and reboot. Since it's hard to run massive games at 4K resolution, we tested the game frame rate at 1080p. Online games first. At 4K resolution, Dota 2 run at 144 FPS, CSGO at 355 FPS smoothly, but Apex Legends put much pressure on the graphics card, only 90 FPS, a little less smoothly in flicking aim. If the resolution reduced to 1080p, the frame rate would go higher. Dota 2 reached 191 FPS, CSGO at 654 FPS, Apex Legends at 239 FPS. No doubt i9 and 3080 are great. Then comes the single-player games. At 4K resolution, at ultra setting, most games we tested were around 30 FPS. For the 95-watt 3080, the pressure is still high. Tomb Raider and Forza Horizon 5 were better, almost 60 FPS, but failed to get a passing score. I'd suggest tuning down the visual effects and making DLSS high resolution to get a better experience. For a smoother experience, I'd suggest lowering the resolution. If it is at 1080p, the 3080's performance is more than enough. Cyberpunk 2077 could run at 65 FPS, other games were above 70 FPS. Tomb Raider could even run at over 100 FPS perfectly smoothly. Let's see the productivity performance. The Adobe Suite PS scored 909, AE at 1540 and PR at 795. Not bad. The VRAM of 3080 is quite high, and a RAM of 64GB is ample. Overall, it's a boost of productivity. In the Spec View 2020 benchmark, the tests focus more on the GPU, so the performance of the 95-watt 3080 is more impressive as before. The overall result is closer to 100-watt RTX 3070 with the same graphics core. In summary, the power requirements of the GA104 core of RTX 3080 isn't low. The clock speed is at 1300 MHz when gaming at 95 watts. It easily handles online games. To play single-player games at native resolution, you'd better tune it down or enable DLSS. Of course, if the laptop increases the power of the graphics card to 130 watts, its clock speed at the frame rate could also be higher. Next is the disassembly part. It's a bit tricky. Unscrew all the screws on the bottom, a suction cup and plastic pry to open the back cover. Note that the bottom panel is very thin. The back cover and the rear air exhaust are connected. You'd better not bend the back cover here. The motherboard is inverted, covered with a large anti-static sticker. Here you can replace and add an SSD. The stock SSD is a 2TB Samsung PM9A1. The hard drive has a large SLC cache. It'd only run short after consecutive 150 Gs writing. Even so, the write speed can stay at 1600 megabytes per second. It has an empty M2 hard drive slot. You can choose to add an extra hard drive. The wireless card is on the top right, Model Killer AX1675X with Wi-Fi 6E support. It's an optimized version of the Intel AX210. There's a 99.99 watt-hour battery at the bottom, which is now in competition too. The max capacity used to be 99 watt-hours, now it has a 0.99 for accuracy. The battery life tested with PC Mark X is 6 hours and 6 minutes. If you want to see the cooling module or RAM, you need to disconnect all cables, remove screws, and turn the motherboard over. The stock memory has two 32GB DDR4 3200 MHz forming dual channel. The slots are full, no need to upgrade. The RAMs are running in 3200 Gear 2 mode, benchmarks on screen. Compared with the two 8GB dual rank memory, its read-write speed and latency are not so ideal. At the top is the cooling module. It's set at 3 fans and 6 heat pipes. Power supply and VRAM are covered by vapor chamber. Now let's look at the cooling performance in field tests. Room temperature 25 degrees Celsius. During standalone FPU stress test is a default extreme mode. The CPU stayed at 94 degrees Celsius, 68 watts and 3.5 GHz. In standalone GPU test, the RTX 3080 stayed at 70.3 degrees Celsius, 95 watts and 1215 MHz. Dual stress test, the CPU ran at 84 degrees Celsius, 45 watts and 2.8 GHz. The GPU was at 70.5 degrees Celsius, 80 watts and 930 MHz. For surface temperature, the maximum keycap is 40.5 degrees Celsius. The WASD keys are about 37 degrees Celsius. The noise level is 49.5 dB. The cooling performance is a bit conservative. Let's try switching to hypercooling, then fan speed will always be full. Noise level reached 54.8 dB. After 30 minutes of dual stress test, the CPU ran at 94 degrees Celsius, 69 watts and 3.5 GHz, significantly better than before. After testing for a while, the CPU would intermittently drop to 45 watts. It can't always stay at 70 watts. The power of the GPU remained. The temperature dropped 5 degrees to 65.4 degrees Celsius. The highest surface temperature was 39.9 degrees Celsius. The WASD keys were 37 degrees Celsius, pretty similar. Overall, the cooling performance is just average. As for the CPU, it's 70 watts in standalone stress test, but the temperature hit 95. There is no way to completely handle the 8-core i9. This GPU isn't hot, but the power setting is conservative. I guess it could take another 15 watts. Maybe MSI regards the GS Stealth series as more of a balanced all-arounder, but I hope the performance limit can be higher. For example, just let users choose performance mode on demand. Now you might have an understanding of this laptop. As usual, 3 pros and cons for your reference. First, the pros. Firstly, the display is excellent and supports color management. Now competition is fierce. MSI just maxed out display specs, 4K 120Hz P3 color gamut compared with specs like 2K 165Hz. This screen ensures sufficient refresh rate, more graphics details with wide color gamut and color management. It's pretty good overall. Secondly, high battery capacity supports 100-watt PD charging. Battery capacity is 99.99 watt-hours, the maximum capacity to carry in flight. It also supports 100-watt PD charging. You could choose a lighter PD charger when high performance isn't needed. Third, the thickness is well handled. The thickest part is only 20.8 millimeters, thinner than lots of gaming laptops. It looks slimmer than those heavy gaming laptops. After talking about the pros, now comes the cons. First, the performance release is conservative. During dual stress test in hypercooling mode, the temperature of GPU is only 65 degrees at 80 watts. The surface temperature is not high. It's too conservative. If allowed a little more power, the performance of the 3080 would have a considerable increase. Second, the keycap size is a bit small. The keycaps are smaller than the standard size, which affects the typing feel. False triggering may happen in the beginning. 17 inches should be enough for a standard size keyboard. I suggest it be improved. Third, the inverted motherboard makes it difficult to clean. It's a bit tricky to disassemble this laptop. The smaller motherboard of the GS76 Stealth is black to standard mounting. I even praised it then. But on this laptop, it's still upside down. To clean and replace thermal paste, you have to take out the whole motherboard, which is complicated. GS76 Stealth is a small modification of the previous GS75. For hardware, it has the specs of a flagship gaming laptop i9 3080 64G and 2T. It's top of the line. But in terms of chassis, it still follows the previous solution, 3 fans and 6 heat pipes and an inverted motherboard. These kind of specs are a bit much for this solution. Overall, high refresh rate, high resolution, large screen and high capacity battery are the highlights. If you want for creative design and occasional gaming, this all-arounder would suit you just fine. Great for multitasking, but if you want a performance release, then a conventional bigger gaming laptop would be a better choice. Alright, that's it for now. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you want to see more, follow us on WeChat official account. I'll talk about laptops there every day. This laptop may be good or bad, but we only have one purpose, to share information and provide guidance. This is BIBA Review Studio. I'm Juwan. I'll see you in the next video.